Welcome and good afternoon to everyone to the Winter 2021 Graduate Group in Education Research Seminar Series for week 6. My name is Danny C. Martinez. I am an associate professor in language, literacy, and culture and chair of the Graduate Group in Education. Thank you all for joining us. We welcome the School of Ed community, the larger UC Davis campus community, as well as guests from other universities. We've had other guests from across the state and the country as well. So please welcome to today's session. Before introducing our guests, I want to introduce Mayra Nunez Martinez, who will be introducing our guest, who is a second-year student in our School Organization and Educational Policy PhD program. Mayra has been an essential part of the work you will hear about today. And prior to beginning her PhD program here at UC Davis, she was a biology teacher in the San Joaquin Valley and a research assistant at the University of Pennsylvania, where she also received her undergraduate degree. Please welcome Mayra Martinez, who will introduce you all to our guest today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Martinez, for that introduction. So good afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure and honor to be introducing 3 amazing scholars whose work centers around improving the access and success of Latinx and Chicanx students in higher education through their teaching, scholarship, outreach, and advocacy. Dr. Marcela Cuellar is an associate professor in the UC Davis School of Education, whose work centers on access and equity in higher education with a focus on Latinx student experiences and outcomes at Hispanic serving institutions, or HSIs, and emerging HSIs. She received her doctoral degree in higher education and organizational change from UCLA in 2012. 2 of her recent publications include Creating HSIs and Emerging HSIs, Latina-Latino College Choice at 4-Year Institutions, published in the American Journal of Education, as well as Racialized Experiences Off and On Campus, Contextualizing Latina-Latino Students' Perceptions of Climate at an Emerging HSI, published in Urban Education. When asked where home was, Dr. Cuellar mentioned that while Sacramento is home right now, Oxnard, the 805, will always be her home. She enjoys lounging with her dog and family, bike rides, and binging on Hallmark and home-cooked Mexican food. A fun fact about Dr. Cuellar is that before she was born, her parents used to work in the fields in Woodland, California, so not too far from Davis if you're there. Dr. Natalia Dipsosa was born in Bogotá, Colombia, and came to the United States in 1995 to continue with her graduate studies and escape the violence in Colombia, which at that time was shaped by the drug trade. She was finishing her degree in economics when the number of kidnappings, extortions, intimidations, and murders became grotesque and unprecedented, even for Colombian standards. These observations of violence eventually brought her to sociology as a field of study. Currently, she's a professor in the UC Davis Chicana and Chicano Studies Department, and all of her work makes contributions to substantive issues in inequality. Her latest book, Community-Based Participatory Research, Testimonios from Chicana and Chicano Studies, is an anthology on Chicana researchers' experiences when implementing community-based participatory research, which showcases the complexity of doing activist scholarship, the variety of ways it may be implemented, how it has been used to create sustainable change, and the challenges to create community empowerment. Last but definitely not least, Dr. Blas Guerrero was born in Monterrey, Mexico. He immigrated to the United States as an infant with his parents who worked as farm workers in Ventura County. His current home is Pleasant Hill, but he grew up in Camarillo, California. He received his master's degree and PhD from UC Berkeley, where he has taught numerous courses. Dr. Guerrero's career in educational outreach and student services spans decades of unconditional commitment to educational equity for all students. Currently, Dr. Guerrero is the Director of Strategic Diversity Recruitment Initiatives and Transfer Programs at UC Davis, where he oversees African American, Native American, and Chicanx Latinx recruitment. He has done extensive research on identifying factors that promote academic success and increase college going rates. Dr. Guerrero's programs and initiatives are viewed as a new paradigm for educational outreach equity initiatives that serve all students. He enjoys cooking, hiking, bike rides, and old-fashioned cruising to new areas of the Bay. Our presenters' collective work demonstrates how interdisciplinary partnerships across an institution can work together to serve the Latinx community in a meaningful and collaborative way. I'm extremely grateful and humbled to be working and learning alongside these 3 scholars and mentors. Now I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to the presenters today. So please join me in welcoming virtually these 3 amazing scholars. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much, Mayra, for that generous presentation and introduction to our work. And I think it's important for us to thank Mayra first and foremost because she has been an integral part of our research project, really heading a lot of the components that we will be talking to you about today. So thank you so much, Mayra. I also want to recognize Yadira Nava, who is here in the audience, and she is one of our undergraduate students and education minors who is also contributing to our research project. So we really have not only just an interdisciplinary project, but a really a multi-generational project that we are here representing today. And it is also my distinct honor and privilege to present with Drs. Deep Sosa and Guerrero on our collaborative project, which today we're entitling or focusing specifically on recruitment practices during COVID-19 and sharing the perspectives from institutional agents at an emerging Hispanic serving institution. So next slide, Natalia. So just to give you a little bit of background on HSIs, for those of you who may not be as familiar with them, but HSIs are currently comprising 17% of all post-secondary institutions in the United States. And this is a figure that has been exponentially growing over the past 25 years of their existence. And so this is a federal designation that is recognizing those institutions that enroll at least 25% Latinx undergraduates. And this is a designation that allows campuses, once they hit this designation, to be able to compete for federal funding to support infrastructure to better support Latinx students at these institutions. One of the trends that we've seen over this last decade is that there is a growing representation of Research One HSIs as more Latinx students are enrolling at these types of institutions. And since this type of institution represents UC, 5 of our 9 UC undergraduate campuses are now HSIs. And so within our own system, this is becoming an increasingly important construct of our idea of what does it mean to really serve students once we hit that enrollment criteria. We also have the 3 remaining undergraduate campuses as emerging HSIs, meaning that in a few more years, our whole UC system will be what we are calling a Hispanic Serving Research Institution, or HSRIs. And this really is a changing demographic or landscape of HSIs in our nation. So recruitment is an important element of becoming an HSI, in the sense that enrollment is what first defines even what an idea of an HSI is, at least in terms of the federal definition. So enrollment, those enrollment numbers matter a lot in that particular sense. And we know that in our state, it's increasingly important for us to think about our Latinx student population, given that we are increasingly the majority in the state. And so in order for us to really advance the state, we're going to really need to figure out how do we better educate our Latinx students. One of the things that was this really unique moment in time in spring 2020 is that this was the first year in the history of the UC that we had Latinx students being the largest group of students being admitted to UC for fall 2020. So this is quite a momentous occasion, and some of you may have heard about that in the news. This was definitely something that was something to celebrate. However, at the same time, we know that COVID-19, the pandemic, hit. And we knew that Latinx communities were being especially hard hit by the pandemic due to the economic divides, the access to health, as well as just access to digital resources. And so we knew that the role that this pandemic would have on this historic moment would be something for us to really think about more deeply moving forward, and how do we really better serve and support these students in our own system. So one of the things, as I was mentioning about recruitment being really important, is that while there's been a lot of efforts to really support and do intentional recruitment for Latinx students, all of these efforts had to move online for fall 2020. And so in spring 2020, there was a lot of movement to really think about how do we engage digitally our Latinx students to try to encourage them to come to our campus. And this is really a context for our study. Next slide. So just to give you a little bit of background, our study also didn't just start with COVID-19. We actually began a partnership with representation from faculty in the School of Education, me, and faculty in the Chicano Studies Department with Natalia, working closely with Blas's team with the Strategic Diversity Recruitment Initiatives and Transfer Programs. And one of the things that this really began as a conversation back in 2017, late 2017, when there was a UC-wide meeting with the different stakeholders, talking about what does it mean for our system to become an HSI. And during this meeting, there was a lot of buzz about a lot of the intentional work that Blas and his team have been doing at our own campus about how do we more intentionally recruit and do so in culturally relevant ways for our Latinx populations. And so this created a conversation for us to say, well, how do we know how effective these efforts are in terms of moving the needle in not only enrolling students more, but also better supporting students. And so this conversation at this meeting became a part of a larger project that I will detail really briefly in just a second. But some of the preliminary results from this partnership that we found early on is that prior to COVID-19, some of the interviews that we had conducted with Chicanx and Latinx students about the reasons for why they enrolled at UC Davis was that a sense of community cultivated in a lot of these intentional recruitment efforts was part of the reason why they ended up coming to UC Davis. So this gave us a sense that really this effort to create a sense of community through these high touch practices that Blas and his team had cultivated were part of the draw that we're bringing students to our campus. And so really having more research on this was something that we wanted to cultivate and provide better evidence for all of the efforts that were going on, given again that it's so important to think about intentionality of how we serve our Latinx students, not only from recruitment, but also once they're here on our college campus. Next slide. So this is just a visual of our project to date. As you'll notice, the gray shaded area reflects kind of the pre-COVID-19 era, where we engaged in student and parent interviews, kind of understanding some of the recruitment efforts that Blas and his team had engaged in to understand what kind of role they were playing in students' decisions of actually then enrolling at our university. Now, when COVID-19 hit, we actually had planned to do more ethnographic work, looking at these actual events during the spring and cultivating what were some of the conversations happening and really getting a sense at the moment from students and parents about how they were receiving information that Blas and his team were putting forward in the various kinds of events that they put on targeting this particular community. But given that everything shifted virtually, we realized we needed to kind of retool and think about a broader understanding of how the pandemic was going to affect recruitment and enrollment from multiple perspectives. So what we did was design really a three-part study that we've been collecting data for, and this just gives you a snapshot of it. Over the summer, we interviewed various institutional agents who are people on our campus who are always providing support to our Latinx students as they were folded into some of these online recruitment activities to get a sense of their own perspectives on these activities. So we did that, and then we also did a survey of students who were admitted for fall 2020, of Latinx students admitted, to understand how they were thinking about the pandemic, what factors were they thinking about their college choice, and also what feedback they could give us on these various online webinars that were targeting them for recruitment purposes. And we've also continued on to do some interviews with students and parents to understand ultimately what were some of those key factors that informed their decisions for which college to attend for this particular year. Next slide. So so you see there's a lot of layers to our study, but today what we're going to focus on is only highlighting that first component, which is from the perspective of institutional agents, which again are individuals within our university who are actively engaged or were actively engaged in some of the online recruitment activities in spring 2020, to get their perspective of how they viewed these online recruitment activities during COVID-19 and to what extent did these adopt culturally relevant approaches that reflect the values of our Latinx admins and their families, but also to gather their perspectives of how they perceive the commitment of the institution to meet an HSI mission moving forward, not just for recruitment, but moving forward. So these are the perspectives that we'll highlight here. Next slide. So just to give you a really brief overview of some of the literature that we've seen related to recruitment practices, we know that intentional recruitment of Latinx students must employ culturally relevant approaches that not only reflect the values of the community, but also include the family as part of that decision process. And that means hiring staff who can actually engage with families as they're making these decisions. That includes bilingual and bicultural staff. What we do know, though, is that there's very limited research understanding, well, what does that really mean in a recruitment context? We have seen that there's research that's focused on programmatic efforts to diversify the student population, but a lot of these recruitment efforts don't really center an idea of culturally relevant practices. And we've also seen that there's emerging research on the recruitment practices of public research universities for online programs, as we see online programs become more of a prevalent practice in universities. And some of the key findings that they show about what's important in these online recruitment practices is, one, understanding who the target population is that institutions are recruiting, and using also the most latest technology to recruit these individuals. But at the end of the day, it's also about how do you engage a personal connection with these individuals that you're targeting. But again, these haven't really had a focus on the culturally relevant dimensions to make these connections for particular populations like Latinx students. So this is where our work hopefully comes in. Next slide. And just to give you a little bit of a context before we talk about the methods, UC Davis really has been engaging over, not just during COVID-19, but really for a decade, more than a decade, on thinking about what are some of the intentional strategies that we need to engage in order to make our campus a campus that is going to be a top campus for our Chicanx, Latinx students across the state. So just really briefly, what some of those elements have included: how do we diversify who our regional pool is? How do we go out and recruit students from communities that historically have been ignored from our system? How do we also create a strong brand so that when people think about what is a great environment for Chicanx and Latinx students, that UC Davis is actually the first campus that they think of? And also, how do we ensure that we expand events, recruitment events, to include not only the students, but also the parents, caretakers, and all those other individuals who often are influential in the decisions that students make about which campus to attend. And as I mentioned, also hiring bilingual and bicultural staff in order to support and answer questions for individuals that are considering coming to our campus community. So with that, I'm going to transition over to Natalia, hand it over to Natalia.
Thank you, Marcela. Okay, so I'm going to briefly talk about our methods. So we conducted 10 one-on-one, well, virtual in-depth interviews, and to analyze that, we used a grounded theory approach. They were transcribed, and we coded. Yadira and I did separately the coding, and that was the way that we ensured consistency in the data coding and interpretation. So the findings we're just going to briefly, and again, these are preliminary findings. The first finding that we want to share with you is about, as Marcela was talking in the literature review, is about that intentionality of creating that sense of belonging and sense of community virtually. So the first quote that we want to share with you is from this institutional agent number 7. And the quote reads, "To show students that they belong at Davis, and to make them feel like they belong." And so I think some of the ways in doing that are having a group of folks who identify as Latinx representing UC Davis and sharing their own experience of feeling of belonging, as well as expressing their interest in supporting the incoming students. So I think that's the goal, and how we try to accomplish the goal. Our Latinx students got access to information about UC Davis to help them make their decision. My primary goal was to show them that we do have a community here. And then we really want them based on who they are, being very intentional. Institutional agent number 8. Another theme that we found was really making sure that the webinars showed that there was very supportive staff, and again, the sense of community. So this is a quote: "Try to convene all the supporters that we have on campus for you if you do come to Davis." And then we talk about what we're going to have to make sure you make sure you achieve and do well, because that was really important for me, to let them know you not only are you all right, but we're going to give you everything you need to do well while you're on campus. They're never been to college. So how do you paint that stroke for the full portrait of all these things a day in a life on campus? You're going to be safe. You're going to be taken care of. We have a little college town, a lot about that sense of community. If you come up with all of these people are going to be here to help you. We're a supportive community. Unfortunately, not all of the things worked out. And so some of the things that did not work out is because we have that digital divide, there are inequities due to technology as well as language, and they were reflective about that. And these are two quotes that really capture that. I think we could have done a better job of assessing the actual technology at home, or connecting with the different players in different regions to know what technologies are available to students. Are we being fair and equitable with what we're doing? We just went blind to this and kind of took it for granted. I feel like we could have done things in Spanish for so many of our monolingual Spanish-speaking families. I think we could have done things by region. But again, right, you're talking about capacity. How many of these can you really do? I wish we would have, another thing that they talked about was that connection with parents, as in the previous quote. I wish we could have had a better way to connect with parents, because we really didn't do that. The best thing that I have ever had was with parents. I really miss that from the cycle, just going out, having a meeting with the parents and reassuring them that your son or daughter will be taken care of, that we're going to support them. And it's a safe place. And I'm just saying, how many parents never got that reassurance? Addressing the second question that we posed about UC Davis and the department commitment to becoming an HSI, these are some quotes that address that. I can say that probably not enough is being done to support the students once they are here. My gut response would be no, but it feels really sad. I think we really lack the resources to help them and to really put words into action essentially. I don't think that we have enough to help them understand their own biases and to address whatever stereotypes they might have. And I think we could have done a lot more with individuals to help people see how they can make Latinx students feel more comfortable in any space. Some people at UC Davis are very committed to the success of Chicanx, Latinx students at UC Davis. Other people try to be, and other people are just simply not. You have an array of people who I would say are committed to the work. And the end of the day, it comes down to budget allocations. You will always budget for your top priorities. And if your top priorities are the success of Chicanx, Latinx students, then that would be reflected. In that, it would also demonstrate through how students feel being at UC Davis. Is not only the academic rigor, but their sense of belonging, their sense of ownership, that they can walk across this campus and feel like it's theirs. like they were meant to be here. Students, again, other two quotes about UC Davis commitment. Students have to actively work on trying to find a staff person to connect to. There is a little secret society type of thing to make sure that they get the accurate or supportive people to help them. But overall, as a whole, I think it's not very welcoming or a space where a student could go unless they're in those particular centers like C-class or CHI studies, where students I feel represented there. I see myself here. So it's not a campus that puts an active effort into building that representation or artwork and things that can create an inclusive, supportive environment. I think there are definitely some problematic areas, and I think that there are also areas of excellence. The problem is that those areas of excellence typically land on a group of people. Blas?
Buenas tardes. I'm elated to be here and share a couple of some of these items that we have, our lessons learned, our questions moving forward, and really some challenges put before us. I'm grateful, extremely grateful for the whole team and helping us really look at recruitment a little bit differently and be more engaged. And they made me pose questions to myself and our team during this process. First one of the things that we began to talk about is, can we ever address the digital divide in a fair and equitable way? We found initially that most Latino, Latinx familias only have 2 digital devices at home at the most. And one of them tends to be a phone. And when we first started off with our work, we began to think about doing this through our Zoom platform like we're doing now. And we began to see that some of the students are going to be watching us via a tablet or via an iPad or via their phone. So I had to make sure that whenever we were practicing our rehearsals, that there were students that we were working with that were watching these different platforms. We had to get out of the mindset of we're going to be in this university kind of discussion and talk, and people are not going to be there. And that was a real challenge to make sure that whatever we were presenting, you could actually see on a phone. Whatever type or narrative you're going to have in text could be visualized on a phone, not just a computer. How do we engage parents in a meaningful and virtual way? This is the biggest question that I had with Dr. Cuellar and Dr. Sosa when we first started, because we found that bringing parents to campus was a significant increase in our yield rates. And that was our biggest fear, is not bringing those parents to our campuses. We had a really good yield rate when we brought students to campus, but it spiked when we had a parent with us. And I was really trying to figure out, how do we really engage parents in this virtual world? And I was taking as a quick little example of what happened to me. A student wanted a one-on-one appointment, and she said her dad was going to be there with her for the appointment. And I said, great. So we set up a time, and of course I had to be later at night to allow him to be part of it. But while we were in a dialogue and discussing, I never saw the dad. It was just me and this young lady going back and forth. And then she said, oh, my dad has a couple questions. And I was thinking, the dad's going to pop in right behind me and ask a question. Her dad was a chef in a restaurant and was working, and it was on this call via his break, and she was FaceTiming him. And so she was with her phone showing him the discussion we were having. Then she put her phone up and put it basically right next, and I had a conversation with her dad like this on his phone, back and forth. Who would even thought that many of our Latino parents are not going to have access to it? But I was able to have a FaceTime conversation with him via the daughter's computer, the only computer they have at home. The next part that was critical for us is, how do we show a sense of commitment and a sense of community in a virtual world? That's going to be our biggest challenge. And that's what I think we're trying to get information from students and parents. Are we doing a good job or not? I mean, what can we do in this virtual world? I mean, for us, it's always, for me, I think you can really make a parent feel at home when you throw in a Spanish joke, a bilingual joke, a bienvenida. They hear my broken Spanish. I think I speak pretty good Spanish, no se crean. But still being there, and just that camaraderie you get with that parent, and talking and joking and talking about, hey, I wish my mom was here working on my Spanish, and you develop that relationship. And how many times when we finish a presentation in person, do the parents line up to shake your hand and say thank you for just us doing our job? And that's what we're trying to get to. How can we get that sense of them really, really engaging with us in that sincere way, knowing that we're really committed to them? And I'm really struggling with that. We think we're doing a good job, but we don't know, because I don't have those handshakes. You know, and there's clicks at the end of people leave meeting. You don't know if you've ever made that engagement. We need to figure out how to be able to get that. And that's why this research study is so important for us, to see what we're missing, what nerves are we hitting? And then how do we engage the monolingual Spanish speaking parents? Because what we're finding, for the most part, they're not coming to any platform. When we do kind of monolingual Spanish events, they tend to be very, very few parents. Now, why is that? Is it because of the digital divide? Is because they don't feel like maybe we're not reaching out to them? Those are the parents that we really need to work with. We've had even some monolingual Spanish webinars for financial aid, and very few parents show up. But then from our perspective, if you have one or two, you've made a huge impact. So that's really, really important. How do we really reach a wider group of students on a personal level when we have limited resources, and we have very limited staff, and we have very limited bilingual staff? And then how do we develop trust with parents and students in a virtual world? And I kind of alluded that to already, because for us, that's a tipping point. Many of the students and Dr. Cuellar and Dr. Sosa and I have been talking about, it's not about the UC Davis rankings. Once they get admitted, they know about that. That's not going to convince them to come here. But we can convince students to take us over higher ranking institutions, because of that sense of community, because that sense of familia. Is that what we should be driving towards? Or with this community, should we be promoting more, hey, we're the number 5th ranked public university, we're number 1 in animal science, we're number 1 in this, number 2 in this, and our graduates do excel. And you know, when you graduate from here, the alumni make X amount and part of their earnings. My gut instinct says, and with the traditional student that we have that's from a very affluent community, those things are really important. How much am I going to make if I go to Davis? For a lot of our Chicano Latinx students, we're finding that's not the most important thing, is where do you have a sense of community? And that poses kind of some of the things that we want to kind of close off with here, at least my couple minutes here, is as an HSI and emerging institution, for us is to really have some culturally relevant approaches. Are we doing the right thing? Because it's much more than just being bilingual. And for many of our students, don't even speak Spanish. So for many of our Latinx students, they're monolingual English. And then we have a whole other group that's multilingual and bilingual, and they speak in Spanish with their parents. Should we be approaching both communities the same? You know, my son is very, very different than his cousins who have parents that only speak Spanish. So we be doing different types of approaches with these students. And particularly right now in this online world, how do we do that? Do we need to have these separate little groups? Do we bring folks together? But beyond that, I think the most important thing is, as an institution, are we really prepared to help students succeed and do well in terms of our retention services? Beyond recruitment and enrollment, institutions should develop and transform practices and structures that better serve Latinx students and staff. And I think that's where we're at, and that's where you have to continue to really push our institution. Because if students come here and we're promising this great sense of community, and they're going to excel and do well, and we're going to have all these support mechanisms, and if we're not supporting, as an example, our Chicano Latino Academic Success Center, and they don't have more desks and more space and more staff, and students get there and there's not a place to sit and study, where are they going to go? They're going to go by themselves to the library? We're defeating what we're trying to do in terms of recruitment if we don't have that retention piece. And that's going to be a real critical, because we're telling students that we're going to have this sense of community, the sense of familia. You know, people like Dr. Mendez there to be with you and meet with you and chat with you and open the doors, because we've done a lot of work together with the center. And, you know, with Dr. Mendez, we host welcomes for the freshmen coming in and the transfer coming in to make that handoff. And that's my biggest concern, that we have to be genuine when we're making that offer in recruitment, that we're going to deliver on the other side of the house. And then really advancing the success of our Latinx students, for us to position UC Davis not only as a Hispanic serving institution, the next level is a Hispanic thriving institution. And what my colega, and I'll give credit to our Vice Chancellor, Pablo Reguerin, and Pablo says we have to become a Hispanic graduating institution. And it's really, we need to have the students that are coming in graduate at the same level as everyone else. And we're moving in that direction, but we still have a lot of work to do. So thank you very much. And I'll turn it back over to Dr. Cuellar.
Thank you so much, Blas, for that wonderful, just additional context on the work being done here at the university. And we wanted to share our contact information if you have any questions about the respective parts that we're talking about or our collaborative project. But I will send it over or open it up to questions. Does anybody have any questions or general feedback?
I see Gloria Rodriguez there raised her hand like we're in a classroom. We couldn't see you, but I could see you, Gloria. I could see you.
I'm a good student. Well, that's not really true, but that's a different conversation. I wanted to first of all just uplift my gosh, the knowledge, what my friend at UC San Diego calls, sheer ganas that's, with behind all this work. Thank you so much. I wanted to make a couple of connections and then ask a quick question that, when I was involved in a project that focused on African-American students in college choice, people who had been admitted to UC and chose to go elsewhere. And I just wanted to, say that this is very affirming because we were always sort of devastated to hear that one of the big reasons that students who had been admitted to a UC campus decided to go elsewhere, including, the CSU campuses in particular, was that sense of community. That it was demonstrated in such powerful ways on campus. And so I also wanted to further commend the effort in exploring what's happening now because of the pandemic. And so it was, important to hear that additional evidence being compiled from the parents' perspective, as well as from the admitted students' perspective. My question was, actually I had one really, really fast. I'm sorry if I wasn't listening carefully, but I didn't hear whether there was, in your sample of interviews, did it include both the first year and transfer students, or was it primarily focused on first year? And then I also wondered about whether the parents were finding other kinds of challenges, or whether the questions you were getting from parents had also to do with the more like transition to college kinds of issues. Like were they feeling supported by whatever high school the student was coming from, or in the case of transfer, like the community college? Like can you speak to maybe, is there some other potential partnership effort that needs to be happening there, or is happening, that was helpful?
So I'll take the first question quickly, and thank you for those wonderful comments, Gloria. So for our survey and actual interviews of students and families, we were only targeting the first year admits, and largely just because this is the traditional, well, not necessarily, right, but that we needed to kind of anchor it in something. And so it was a start. And I would just say that I'll mention really quickly that was even in itself a tremendous undertaking, because we had to move so fast to try to get the infrastructure in place, one, to create a survey, and then actually partner with different folks to get access to who those admits were, and then actually cultivate and generate. So we have data of 1,100 admits, and they've given us their thoughts on what they were thinking about as they were making their college choice. And this is about 20% of all those first year admits. But I think you raise a wonderful point that transfer students would be the next group to look at and think about more meaningfully. But the webinars that the university created did target first year as well as transfer students. So we have some data, at least in terms of the webinars and the messages conveyed to students through that respect. Blas or Natalia, do you all want to take the one about the families and partnerships?
So pre-COVID, though, we do have some information about transfer students. so pre-COVID, we were able to do, I'm trying to look right now at how many interviews we did. So I apologize if I'm trying to find right now that data, but we did get to interview both students that were transferred and non-transfer. And so for parents, we did, I think that it would be a great partnership. I think we were able to interview parents, both moms and dads, and also caregivers, because not all the students are have a parent in their lives. And so that has been really important to be mindful of.
And then on a related note to the parents and the partnerships, I think our biggest partnership when we found the highest number of applicants in yield level was where we actually have a counselor that's really working with us, particularly if we have an alumni that's a UC Davis Aggie that went back to a high school and is working and partnering with us, because they tend to be the conduit for that information. That's not necessarily us in terms of relaying all that information to parents and make them feel comfortable. And then I tend to get a question via a counselor that a parent had for them through their son or daughter about something they wanted to know about Davis or about financial aid or about housing or about retention or about whatever it might be. And in this COVID environment, it's not the parents that are reaching directly. The hardest part is that we don't have enough of those strong relationships with all the counselors in all these different schools. I wish we did. If we could really have that person, I mean, I wish we had funds to go back what we did 5 or 6 years ago. We'd have a counseling kind of conference, and we brought high school counselors from Southern California to spend a weekend at UC Davis. They could explore the campus, the retention services, meet some of our faculty and staff, then take that information back home, and they would become the conduits. So where we do have that, our biggest feeders are actually high schools from Salinas. Our biggest feeder is Alisal High School. And that's just happened over the last 5 years. Why? Because one of their counselors is a UC Davis alum that is our advocate and talks to parents about any question they have about Davis. She's there to meet with them. And she's a godsend for us. And she's been involved with us. She's a chaperone, brings students to Davis, brings 200 students from that high school to visit campus every year. So those little things are what kind of go beneath kind of all the recruitment side that really make an impact. Great question.
We have Paco up next with a question.
Okay, thanks. Thank you for the really interesting presentation. I really enjoyed it. So my question was about, so in recruitment, it's in a way, it's you're kind of competing with other institutions for students. And I was wondering if you, in your data collection or in the things you've heard from parents or students or anyone else, if you've learned about things that other institutions are doing well or that UC Davis is doing better, kind of just other, strategies that might be something to consider including.
The one thing that we've done that other campuses now are trying to replicate is we began to involve our faculty and staff in a series of career webinars. So I reached out to our alumni and our faculty at the medical center. And I have physicians there and nurses that are actually at the medical center that did a webinar for Chicano Latinos that wanted to go into medicine and talked about their own personal journeys and what it takes to be a doctor. And then I had Dean Kevin Johnson put one together for the Latinx students, and he brought some of his faculty and some of the alum. And so we also did it for the African-American community and the Native American community. And now the other campuses are trying to replicate that little piece, right? I said, okay, what can we do besides us? Although all the kids that want to be doctors and all the students that want to transfer and high school students. So we did that as part of our anti-melt series. And we did it, we had women of color in successful career positions. We did law, we did medicine, and now we're going to venture into doing STEM and a variety of other ones as well. And so using our alumni and all of our faculty, we really have not tapped into them in terms of in a way that we could, because not everybody will be available to come to one room and meet with students. But through Zoom, we're going to be doing more and more of that.
And I think too, Paco, with some of the data we're gathering, we're like just starting to actually be able to analyze it more closely. But just, I will also mention that the impetus of us engaging in this collaborative project really stemmed from when we were at the CUC-wide meeting and Blas shared some of the practices that he engages in. And the other campuses were like, wait a minute, how do we start doing that? So I think there was a clear understanding that this was intentional, and we're seeing other campuses now do this, right? Where even our own campuses, sister campuses are our competitive group that we're competing with.
Yeah, and I think that it's really important as we think of other things that UC Davis might continue to do or is doing really well, is not to forget those key questions about the digital divide, about the monolingual Spanish parents, about those kinds of inequities of who are we not reaching, about so that we don't leave out special parents, about that diversity of Chicanx, Latinx students. So, and I think that those are the things that for us are really, really important. So yeah. Hi, Lina.
Hi. So I just want to say great job, everyone. And hearing from the other side, I've been hearing students say that they came to UC Davis because of those webinars. And they want to learn how can they be more involved with campus. And it's been, I think for me, really rewarding to be a part of some of those webinars, but also be on the other side, listening to students who actually decided to come and were so impacted by those webinars to choose UC Davis. So thank you. But the other comment that I want to make is that we really need staff on campus to do the recruitment, as well as to make sure that students who are here feel welcome, and that their parents could ask questions in whatever language they feel like. And, you know, I think so often when people leave, you know, positions closed or their contracts, that we don't replace them. And there's just something about that one-on-one with someone that students and families really need. So I want us to kind of just keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, I think that that's a great point. The idea that there's very few resources that the university has allocated to this. So that's our point about what is the real commitment of UC Davis towards this in terms of staff, in terms of really doing an effort that is that personal touch that you say, Lina, and I think that is a real important thing. And again, for virtually, how and especially for parents, even for me, like we were practicing ahead of time how to do this presentation. I still struggle with doing presentations on slides and even reading your chats or how to answer them. You know, I struggle with it. So I can imagine for parents who are not as technologically savvy, how do we start a conversation with them around issues and around we want you to talk to us and to ask us any questions that you want. I think that is something that we need to be mindful of, because I still struggle, and I teach almost every day, and I still struggle. You know, I had to practice several times on how to do the Google slide presentation.
I see because of time, there was another question there. I'm hoping, I know Vanessa's close to our community and it's something that Blas started speaking to a bit, but I want to thank you all for presenting with us in the Graduate Group in Education, particularly welcoming this work that is much needed right now as we try to understand COVID and its impact on undergraduates. I want to thank Dr. Cuellar. I want to thank Dr. Natalia Di Sosa, who is also a new member of the Graduate Group in Education. I wanted to just make sure I recognized you, Natalia, Dr. Div-Sosa, for that. We're happy to have you in our community, and Dr. Blas Guerrero for joining us. I'm really excited about this work, and I can't wait to see how this work really affects some change in what we're doing as we we are promoting that we are a Hispanic serving institution. So thank you all for joining. Please join us in 2 weeks. We have next Monday off, but in 2 weeks we have Dr. Liam Aiello, who will be joining us for his brown bag. He's a postdoctoral fellow at the UC Davis Graduate School of Education for the Teachers as Learners Project. He's in the middle there. He's probably getting really, didn't think I was gonna call on him, but please join us to hear his talk. Thank you all and have a great day and week.
Thank you for